Hello, and welcome to Spring Quarter 2024. I know what year it is. This is 17B, History 17B, and I am your instructor, Karen Gelman. This is your Welcome to the Class lecture. In this lecture, we will be considering what you have signed on for by taking this class with me and looking over the course format. When it comes to lecture format, I put an outline like this near the beginning of each lecture so that you can see at a glance which topics are covered in any particular video. Much of what I am going to go over in this lecture, lecture 1 here, is also in the syllabus. The idea is that if you see the information more than once and in more than one way, you are more likely to remember it. The lower box here tells you what the coda or sort of the afterword to the lecture will be. Don't worry about this right now. It's not something that you are required to follow. It's just kind of a for fun thing that I stick on. I have found over the last several years that people come to this class with quite different expectations, and this makes perfect sense. But I have 10 weeks to discuss 135 years for a fairly large geographic, political, and social entity. If you have your heart set on a particular topic, I may or may not cover what you want. Best to come with an open mind, but also to look through the Canvas course site, especially the syllabus, to make certain that this is a class that you will enjoy. This is the class that you have signed up for, HIS 17B, listed also as just History of the US. There's a great deal left to interpretation right from the start to figure out what this class might actually be about. Just getting to the full course title takes some knowledge that the university simply assumes that you have. The HIS at the beginning of the course number tells you that this is a history class. This seems pretty straightforward, but actually requires that you know the subjects taught at an American university in the early 21st century, as well as common conventions of abbreviation. If you had to look up the subject abbreviations for this class or any other when you registered, that was part of figuring out how the UCD Registrar's Office has decided to communicate with you. The number 17 may or may not mean anything to you. It's a 2-digit number, so I will be approaching the material as if it is new to you. Higher level courses at UCD have 3-digit numbers, but this system is not constant across universities or over time. So for instance, we don't call this History 101. When I was in college, in the dim, dark reaches of time, I would have interpreted the number 17 in the context of course registration in a completely different way. At UCD, in the history department, the 2-digit number tells me something that you may or may not know. I knew when I agreed to teach this course that I would have TAs and discussion sections just from the course number. The B after the HIS 17 suggests that there is more than one class called HIS 17. Otherwise, why take up space with an extra letter? And that is indeed the case. There is a 17A, and in the past, at some point before I came here, there was a 17C. Now there's only A and B. If you know anything about Western conventions of measuring time and that history involves change over time, you can figure out that 17A is most likely to cover US history before this class starts. But if you just look at the registrar, when does this class start? And not the class time, but the material covered by the class. The dividing line between HIS or History 17A and History 17B is 1865. You probably know or suspect or figured out from context that this set of digits, 1, 8, 6, and 5 in this order, designates a year in this context. You almost certainly would have been surprised if I had initially said the individual numerals rather than 1865. This is part of the vast amount of information you have spent your life learning so that you can function in the world around you. The number 1865 is not necessarily a year. It depends on context. But even if you know it designates a particular period of 365 days, you bring other cultural knowledge to interpreting why that year might be written in different places and what it might signify in any context. For example, if you saw this penny, you would probably know that if you hear crashing and banging in the background, that's my rabbit. He always chooses when I'm recording to be very active. Back to the penny. For example, if you saw this penny, you would know that 1865 represents a date, but a date for what? If you know the basics of American money, then you can read more from this coin than is actually written on it. You know that the numeral 1865 is a date, and that the number spelled out on the other side of the coin, ONE or 1, indicates value, not the other way around. And you are likely to know that the date represents the year in which the penny was minted or made. You can, and do, read more from this coin than what is literally written on it. The more you know on certain topics, the more meaning you derive from the coin. But you may very well derive different meaning than the person who may be sitting in the same row as you in the lecture hall at some point over the quarter. If you were an American shopkeeper and got an 1865 penny, you would know it's not really legal tender anymore, and not because it's a penny and pennies are basically useless now. You would notice right away that the design of both sides of the coin are not the images on pennies minted in the first decades of the 21st century. Actually, this one isn't either. It looks like it's 1980. Like most things, coins wear out and are replaced with new coins from the US Mint. You, as a shopkeeper, might reject the penny because you know it has no real value as money in 2024. On the other hand, you might keep this penny because you think it may be worth more than 1 cent as an object. You know that people collect coins, and you know that old coins are often more valuable than new ones. If you are a savvy collector of coins, or in other words, a numismatist, you would know that this coin we've been looking at is worth more than 1 cent, but not much more as things go in the world of coin collecting. An 1865 penny, like the one on the left, will probably get our shopkeeper around $20 to $30. Nothing to sneeze at, but kind of not a fortune. On the other hand, if our shopkeeper knows very specific things about pennies, like the two different types of 5 on the so-called Indian head pennies, then said shopkeeper might realize that they have a coin like the one on the right, which sold at auction for $2,820, a bit more than 20 or 30. I had to look that up because I am not a numismatist. I would, however, be able to come quite close to assessing the year the penny was minted, even if the date were obscured from the design and imagery on the coin. I haven't studied coins, but I have studied American history, which is good for you since supposedly I'm going to be teaching you something about it this quarter. Each of you looking at this coin reads a somewhat different suite of meanings from it. But if I were you and had not fast forwarded the video already, I would be wondering why Karen was spending so long talking about pennies. The point is that depending on your historical context and on your own life and interests, you derive different types of ideas from the image of this coin in the first moment of seeing it. One meaning of this coin in this specific context, the first lecture of a history course, is that I want you to remember that absolutely everything from the past is like this. It, whatever it may be, meant different things to different people, even at the time it was created, and even if they all called it by the same name or label. and it meant something different to those people in the past than it means to us now. A historian examining this penny would study it and consider what meanings it has held, to whom, and why. I put the picture on the right to illustrate that if I put a number on it and show it to folks who have not been listening to me go on and on about pennies, they tend to read the number with the picture on the right as an amount, like the number of pennies in the jar before it tipped over, maybe 1,865. If you wondered, even briefly, why anyone would fill a jar with useless coins, tip the jar over, and then take a photo, then that was historical inquiry. Well done. Now, what does this 1865 penny tell us as historians? We know, historian or not, that 1 cent means 1/100th of a US dollar. And if you know your history, then in 1865, 1 US dollar had about the same buying power as $20 now. The shield or coat of arms for the US is derived from European feudal heraldry, symbolizing military power and loyalty. The arrows down here are military power symbolism again. If you know the seal of the US, it has an eagle and it's clutching 13 arrows in one of its claws for the 13 original colonies, British colonies. Not all American colonies were British. Keep that in the back of your mind. I assume that they have only put 3 on the penny here for aesthetic or fitting things onto a small coin reason. The chaplet or crown circlet of oak leaves and acorns here is called a civic crown, which kind of seems like a contradiction in terms since crown suggests royalty and civic suggests in the US democracy, but we'll go with it. The oak symbolizes strength and endurance. The design is called the Indian head design. I've given you a quote here from the man who designed the image, a supposed generic Indian princess wearing a feathered headdress. There is a great deal to think about here that is relevant to the history we will be covering in this class. We can, and probably should, talk about this imagery in both lecture discussion and discussion sections. I'd also like you to come back to this periodically as we go through the class, back to this image and these thoughts. But for now, I am just going to read what artist engraver James B. Longacre wrote when he was applying to the competition to have his design chosen for the penny. From the copper shores of Lake Superior to the silver mountains of Potosi. Now, I might just mention that Potosi is not in North America and not in the United States. From the Ojibwa to the Araucanian, the feathered tiara is as characteristic of the primitive races of our hemisphere as the turban is of the Asiatic. Yes, I think you can read into that what group Mr. Longacre belonged to and how he felt about his own position in the world. Nor is there anything in its decorative character repulsive to the association of liberty. We see liberty written right here on it. It is more appropriate than the Phrygian cap. The Phrygian cap is the kind of red, almost looks like a oversized beanie that you see in French Revolution pictures, symbol of freedom. But here, Mr. Longacre goes on. I said I'd just read it. I can't do it. I just can't do it. Okay. The emblem rather of the emancipated slave than of the independent freeman, of those who are able to say, we were never in bondage to any man. I regard then this emblem of America as a proper and well-defined portion of our national inheritance. Think about who we are. What does our stand for here? Having now the opportunity of consecrating it as a memorial of liberty, our liberty, American liberty. And back to the title of the course. US, this abbreviation, of course, stands for United States of America, and the registrar has saved itself some printing costs by not putting the A on the end of it. What has constituted the United States, or United States of America, as opposed to the United States of Mexico, which could also be abbreviated US, although you don't usually see that? What has constituted the United States has changed rather considerably between 1865, when this course begins, and the year 2000, when I'm deciding to end it, as has the way that words such as liberty on the coin and free on the map have been interpreted. This class, 17B, starts in the year 1865, the year which marked the end of the American Civil War, as well as the end of legalized enslavement of people in the United States. We will be picking up with a country about half the size of the US as we know it now, and considering how the ideas of Americanness, freedom, and liberty have been interpreted and reinterpreted as we get to the behemoth that the US would become in our lifetimes. Now let's go back to the nuts and bolts of the class, what to expect and how to make your way through the Canvas course site. Even if you've been with me for a class before, you should at least listen to this, at least on an increased speed so that you hear some of it. And you should go through the current syllabus as I'm constantly readjusting and tweaking the specifics of my classes. If you are listening to or watching this lecture, chances are that you have already found this course on Canvas. But just in case, something like this is what you will see when you go to your Canvas dashboard, and you will want to click on the box for History 17B, which I've indicated here with the red arrow. When you open the course site, you will see something that looks like this. Note that the syllabus is the top module. You can open up modules with little arrows on your homepage. The syllabus is closed here, and Module B is open. You can get to this information by clicking either Home up here in the left-hand tabs or down here on Modules. It will give you the same thing, more or less. You will see there is a list of modules showing what I intend to cover. Please note, please really note, modules will not correspond to weeks. The modules are constructed around the history we're covering and not ruled by the tyranny of the Gregorian calendar that rules our quarter system. You can tell which module is which and generally what we cover in that module from the heading. If anything changes, and it may because I change my mind periodically, that will be reflected here in the modules of the homepage. And you will never be asked about material that has not been available to you for at least 24 hours. When you open a module, you will see a pop culture package, a set of lectures, and a set of readings. This particular image is from last year. The lectures are posted as we go along because I change my mind periodically. But once a lecture is posted, you will be able to get to it by finding the lecture here or in assignments on the tab, one of the tabs on the left. You can get to lectures, quizzes, and term project due dates through the assignments tab. The readings listed are for the entire module, not for a single lecture. And remember, a module may last more than a week. Often they will. If I ask about a reading, I will make it clear which one I want you to read more carefully. Aside from that, all readings are somewhat optional for my part of the course, the lecture part of the course. I would like you to at least glance through each of them so that you have an idea what each one is about. But I absolutely do not expect you to read every single word of every posted reading. Your TA may decide to work with any of these readings because your TAs are individuals with their own specialties and places of excitement, in which case your individual TA will let you know what you should read for their part of the course. You can also access readings under files over here where I have sorted the readings into separate folders for each module. I will talk about how to tackle history reading without tears in this class or any other in the next lecture. You can access what Canvas forces me to call quizzes at the Quizzes tab or under Assignments. These are really responses to questions on the lectures, occasionally the readings, but really mostly the lectures for any module. If you have not had me before, don't panic about these things. Once you familiarize yourself with the course structure and expectations, you will see why this is not as intimidating as it might first appear. I have found that people have an easier time accessing the syllabus for course policies from the home page, so I don't use this little syllabus tab down here and make you scroll through one long document. Make certain that you familiarize yourself with the first two parts of the syllabus, course overview structure, and grading. I am keenly aware that the world has changed since COVID. That is the nature of history, change over time, rather than, or I suppose in addition to, because I'm getting old, ranting about our new reality. I've tried to make my class as approachable as I can using COVID-developed tech like video lectures or YouTube lectures. No system is perfect, and I say this not to preempt criticism, but so that you know that if what I have set up has not anticipated your particular situation, talk to me or to your TA. Don't suffer bravely alone. We aren't like that. We don't want to make you suffer. With that in mind, before I get into the weeds of assignments and grading, I'd like to let you know what to expect when it comes to lectures. You have a written explanation of lectures as well as advice on taking notes in the syllabus at the tab circled in red. When you go to it, you will see something that looks like the image on the right. I will be inverting, or sometimes people call it flipping, the classroom for this course. Any lecture material that you need to understand will be on video. That gives me an opportunity in the Monday, Wednesday, Friday live sessions to discuss your interests and questions. One of the reasons that I am inverting the classroom is that I know it can be tricky to balance all the parts of overfilled and complicated lives. The Monday, Wednesday, Friday live lecture discussion times are not mandatory. I know that this will not take away most stress and complications in your lives, but I'm hoping my class can add as little to that as possible. The other, and to be honest, perhaps the main reason that lectures are on video is that I think it offers learning advantages that live lectures cannot. For example, you can watch videos in parts rather than in one long, dragged out, exhausting stretch. If your mind wanders, you can go back and watch parts of the video whenever you like. You can watch any part of a video multiple times, and you can watch a video section at midnight if that helps. I've been known to do that. Use the recorded lecture format to fit your own life and approach to learning. You should look at this section, the lectures section, in the syllabus because I'm only going to draw your attention to a couple of parts here. One is you will have access to video lectures, in-person lecture discussions, in-person discussion sections, and readings. This is not meant to overwhelm you with things that you must do, but to give you flexibility. In order to do well in the class, you will need to engage with lecture videos and discussion sections. You do not need to do everything. The recorded lectures are not going to follow the Monday, Wednesday, Friday date schedule exactly. Lecture videos have far more information than live lectures, so you are not being cheated of any course material. Sometimes there will only be 2 videos per week. Sometimes a video will be longer, sometimes shorter. I will not ask quiz questions for anything that has not been posted for at least 24 hours. I've not written it here, but you are certainly allowed to open a quiz, read the question, and come back and answer it later. You will have access to each quiz until the closing date for that quiz. Now we get to the part that generally worries people most when starting a course: what you need to turn in and how you will be graded. Course overview and structure is the very first item on the syllabus. You open it up, it looks like that. In one sense, any particular assignment is optional in this class. It is up to you to complete whatever assignments you would like in order to earn enough points for the grade that you want. All available assignments, including section grade, add up to a total of 180 points. You are graded on a standard 100-point scale. I will reiterate that. Your grade is based on accumulated points, not on percentages. If you accumulate 90 points over the course of the quarter, you have a 90, which is an A minus. You do not have a 90 over 180 or 50%, which would be an F. I have put my grading scale in the syllabus under course structure, and I'm putting it here so that you have a couple of ways to find it when you want it. Please note now that the minimum number of points that you need for a flat A is 94. 93 points will be an A minus. I do not expect most students to complete all assignments. Assignments outside of sections are a mix of short responses to lectures and sometimes reading, called quizzes, and a series of writing assignments structured to develop into a term project. You can combine assignments in whatever way works best for you. I really love history. I mean, it's depressing, but I love it and it helps me understand the world. So at a baseline, I'd like you to get at least something out of my class. So I'd like to take the grade off the table as much as possible and let you approach the class in a way that might actually work well for you. Please note, your section grade is worth up to 20 points this quarter and is determined solely by your TA. Also, your TA will be the one grading your final project assignments. These assignments are structured as stages, and we'll see more of that under grading. If you wait too many weeks to start this, you will limit the number of possible due dates that you can use to earn points. Better to start early on as much as you can and get a lot of my class out of the way before your midterms in your other classes. If you do not go to sections, and this is absolutely critical, if you do not go to sections, you will miss clarifications of what we are looking for on each of the final project stages. I don't make you come to the live lecture discussion, but you do need to go to discussion section. In the long run, honestly, that hour a week will make your life easier. There is a 24-hour grace period after the deadline for all course assignments when you may turn them in without a penalty. Now, this does not hold for section. Section policy, including late policy, is at the discretion of your TA. All work must be turned in by the time assigned to this class for the final exam with no extensions. And the reason for this is that, not that we want to be mean suddenly at the end of the quarter, but your TAs and I will be under pressure from the university and from the department to turn grades in quickly after our assigned exam time. So remember, it's okay and expected that you miss some assignments. If you're having a rough week, you can't do one of the quizzes or a couple of the quizzes, or you need to take a week off from the formal term paper assignment or the formal term assignment, that's okay. Just make sure it doesn't happen week after week after week and you don't fall into a pit. Grading is the second entry on your syllabus. And again, the beginning of it will look like this. There are 3 main categories of assignments in this course. You can mix and match until you accumulate enough points for the grade that you want. It is up to you to complete whatever assignments you'd like in order to earn enough points for your desired grade. All available assignments, including section grade, add up to a total of 170 points. In addition, there are up to 10 points that I can add on to your accumulated points for an overall of 180 possible points. I call those 10 my discretionary points, meaning it's at my discretion whether I give them to you or not. And they're intended as a boost for folks who come to in-person lecture discussion meetings on a fairly regular basis. The point is not to punish those of you who can't come, because you could still get points in other ways. You are graded on a standard 100-point scale. And again, I will repeat that. Your grade is based on accumulated points, not on percentages. So a 90 is 90 points, which is an A minus. It's not a 90 over 100, which is a 50%, which is an F. The categories and possible points are offered are Category 1, lecture and reading quizzes, up to 60 possible points. Category 2, section, 20 possible points. Now, if you think about this in a point system, that's 2 letter grades right there. Category 3, stages to the final project, up to 90 possible points, and my discretionary points, which are 10, which is basically a letter grade, and they all add up to 180 points. Don't get too much of a false sense of security. Most people actually work really hard in my class. They can just work without the stress of having some of that work be wasted. Also, I don't want people to obsess about grades, so the letter grade for more than 100 points is still an A. The 7-ish, and sometimes it's 10 because I end up with a few people with the same number of points. But the people with the highest number of points at the end of the quarter get an A plus. Category 1, lecture quizzes. 3 points per quiz, 20 quizzes, up to 60 possible points. Each week, there will be 2 questions posted, the first at some point on Tuesday and the second on Thursday. You can find these questions in the quizzes sidebar or navigate to them using assignments. Your responses should incorporate material from lecture, and if I specifically ask about a reading, then from that. Responses should be at least 350 words and are due by Sunday at 11:59 on the week they are posted. Don't be concerned by the fact that Canvas forces me to label these questions as quizzes. I'm interested in having you engage with the material, not that you get some correct answer or deliver deathless prose. As long as your response is the required length, and this is crucial, it is absolutely clear that you listened to my lecture, then you will receive full marks for the quizzes. The reason I stress my lecture is not that I think I'm brilliant and amazing, but there has to be some point to taking a class and me making lectures and teaching the class to give you something that you can't just get from a good Google session on your own. So I try to make the lectures not exactly what you get from a textbook, maybe thinking about things a little bit differently or presenting particular examples. So the one baseline thing that you absolutely have to do in the class is watch the lectures, at least mostly. Category 2, section points, 20 points. Again, that's 2 letter grades. But in addition to those 2 letter grades, just from going once a week and interacting with your TA, section is your key to success in lower level history classes at UCD. Do not, seriously, don't cheat yourself by not going to section. Your TAs are all incredibly well qualified. I'm super excited about the TAs I have this quarter. They are the ones who will guide you through analyzing readings, and they are the ones who will answer most of your questions on course material and final project assignments. Your TAs are the ones who will know how your work develops over the course of the quarter. They decide how many of those 20 section points you get. They are also the ones who grade your final project coursework. If your TA has no idea who you are, and or if you miss important directions on assignments that your TA gives you in section, you will do far less well in the class. So I'm going to say this again. I do publish the baseline directions to your term project parts on Canvas, but your TA is allowed to make special requests, and those might not be reflected in the written directions that I've given you. You must go to section if you want to really do well on the term project. Category 3, formal writing stages. There are 9 possible due dates with up to 10 points possible on each, so up to 90 points. But I'm going to tell you this right now. This is the one category that is graded fairly harshly. So rarely do people get the 90 points straight off the bat. There are 9 Fridays on which you may turn in 1 and only 1 assignment. So you can't turn in stage A and B on the same week. for your final project every Friday starting with the 12th of April. There are 7 possible stages of assignments, but you are not required to get through all of the stages. The intention is that you have an opportunity to work with any stage until you feel comfortable with it without having that tank your grade. So let's say that on one of those due dates, you get 2 points out of the 10 possible. That means you've got 2 points, not that you've got a 2 out of 10 or failing grade. That's not really, not really the point. The thing is, you collect points and you do it again. Unlike the informal writing, these stages have very specific requirements that you need to meet before you progress to the next stage, but you may repeat any stage at least once. I used to say as many times as you wanted, but unfortunately, there's always those couple of people, right? Who would keep basically turning in the same thing and expect to get their 5 or so points over and over again. And that's kind of unreasonable if you think about it. So, especially since you have lots of other ways to get points. So your TA may give you permission to repeat a stage more than once if they think you're genuinely working on it, but you have to get your TA's approval for that. If you get 9 or 10 points on a particular stage, you will automatically move on to the next stage. If you get between 6 and 8 points, you may either move on or repeat that stage, and that will depend on your TA's judgment. Go to section, make sure your TA knows you, knows if you're sincere and try. If you get 5 or fewer points, then you must repeat that stage. You must do the 6 stages in order. Your TA determines whether or not you will move on to the next stage. If you skip ahead before you have the all clear from your TA, you will get no points for that due date. Do not confuse due dates and stages. You may turn in one stage assignment on any Friday starting with 12 April, irrespective of whether you are repeating a stage or starting on a new stage. The up to 10 points go with each due date, not the stage. I find examples helpful. I'll go through the first one I've put up with you here, and then you can read the other example on your own. So let's say person X gets 4 points on stage A, means they have to repeat it. They work with their TA and submit a redo of stage A on the next due date. They get the full 10 points on the redo because they've worked with their TA and taken their TA's advice. Person X has accumulated a total of 14 points from formal writing assignments and moves on to stage B. So note that they've actually gotten 14 points from one stage and not just 10. That only goes if it actually looks like you're working on things. I will say more about your final project later, and your TAs will be the ones who guide you through it. So for now, just note that you can find a description of all of the stages in grading under the syllabus. I am happy to have people reach out to me for any reason except to tell me that you hate me or that I am horrible and the very, very worst instructor you've ever had. You can message me through Canvas. This goes for your TAs as well. Canvas has changed over time and sometimes it takes some getting used to, but you actually don't need your TA's email in order to get in touch with them. You can message them through Canvas. You can also email me. My email is kdgettleman@ucdavis.edu. Just be careful about the EL, particularly if you type English. Often our fingers are used to typing TTLE, and often people will find that their emails bounce. So EL and just a single man and not many of them. You can set up a Zoom meeting with me. I'm usually available afternoons until 5 o'clock, evenings between 7 and 10 p.m. and weekends, but you have to contact me to schedule a time and get a link. There's no standing Zoom link that you can use. Spouse is fine hanging out in front of an open Zoom link, but for me, it just gives me the heebie-jeebies. So you have to get a link, especially for you. In my lecture videos, I will give you key points at the end so you know what I wanted you to understand from the lecture. Lecture 1 is the only time there's this little extra bit on there. So here are the key points to lecture 1. You should explore the Canvas course site to make certain that you can find everything. Don't have to memorize everything, just make sure you know where to find it. Grading policy, assignments, and most basic course information are in the syllabus. familiarize yourself with the different parts of the class syllabus, and if you would like clarification for anything, ask. You can reach me by sending a message using Canvas or email me, katiegevelman@ucdavis.edu. Do not feel like you have to read everything that I offer to do well in this class. In life, we rarely get to do everything that is asked of us, much less do everything perfectly. This is a good class to practice figuring out what you need to do to get something from the class and how much you want or can do on any particular topic. In order to do well in the class, you will need to watch most lecture videos. Anyone teaching a broad period of history has to make choices about what to focus on. We simply cannot do it all. When it comes to assessing your work, we don't care if you got great things from the internet, even when they're true. We want to know that you are thinking about the material that we have chosen to present. You won't know what that is without watching lectures. If you could, there would be no point for me to take the time to make lectures. I recommend doing as much work early as you reasonably can and starting to accumulate points as soon as possible. Give yourself a buffer for when you have exams and projects due in other courses. If we are in the last few weeks of the quarter and you have done absolutely none of the quizzes nor turned in any writing assignments, you'll start to feel pressure for points. Don't do that to yourself if you can possibly help it. Now, I've tried to be straightforward about how I approach both history and grading in this class. Not every teaching style is a good fit for every single student, so this is a good time to consider. Is this the class for you? Know that the class is inverted. All lectures will be on video. Live class times will be for questions, discussion, conversation as you desire. Most people like this system a lot, but about 1 person out of every 75 doesn't. If you are that 1 person, it's better to know it now and take the class in another quarter with somebody else. My grading is structured to focus on helping you think about my course material, not whether you know more details than another person. You are absolutely not in competition with one another in my class. You have to pay attention to the aspects of history that I am presenting. You do not need to agree with me on everything or anything, really, but you do need to engage with my material and not Wikipedia and the like. Otherwise, why am I even here? I really enjoy teaching history, and I especially really like UCD students. I learn a great deal from my students every term. Feel free to get in touch with me and set up a Zoom or an in-person meeting. I don't have a healthy office space, but I am able to talk to people after class most days this quarter. So just grab me or arrange a time to Zoom with me. Coda means tail in Italian. It's derived from the Latin word for tail, cauda. In music, a coda is an extra bit at the end of a piece or movement added on to the basic structure. In ballet, a coda is usually when the dancers for the different parts dance across the stage after the performance and are acknowledged by the audience. In literature, a coda is essentially an afterword or follow-on. I usually put a coda after the key points of a lecture. This is because history is, and thus the key points are, often really depressing. You will never be responsible for anything that I put in a coda. The coda for the intro lecture here is short. While researching pennies, I found that people have made some rather amazing things with pennies. Tabletops made with pennies are apparently a classic. Spheres made of pennies are great for indoor and outdoor decor, apparently. Some folks have too many pennies and maybe too much time on their hands, but wow. If you were just listening, the picture is of a horse's head made entirely of pennies. Clothing and jewelry made from pennies are quite popular. This clever person has made a pair of penny loafers out of pennies, but I noticed they haven't put a penny in the penny loafer slot. My son pointed out to me that having a background of some sort on my slides will cut down on the white glare. My hobby is historical clothing in body form, so I decided to make my backgrounds period appropriate textiles. I will show you what the fabric for lecture is in the very last slide of the lecture. That would be this one. This one is a detail from a denim coat made in 1855 that is in the collection of the FIDM Museum. And you can read a post about it here. Really interesting.